Welcome back to New Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creators. It is I, the mayor, Flobo Boyce, in the mayor's office, hang with the people who are doing the dang thing. You know me, I'm a multi-hyphenate. I do a lot, but you know what? When I meet someone who does so much more and has a personality, I gotta bend the knee. Please welcome our guest on this special episode, Mark J. Bennett. How's it going, sir?
Hey, it's doing a great day today. Great to see you. How are you doing, Flobo?
Well, you know, I'm doing okay. I was doing great, and then I realized that I got to start saving up for rent now because I live in Los Angeles, and the housing situation isn't that great. But that's how it is.
Well, we're going to talk about housing, so that's a good entree. That's really good.
Exactly. Before we get to that, though, how are you? I mean, you are a busy man. You do a whole lot. Like, how would you describe what you do to the uninitiated?
So I'd say my career and my focus is really a combination of three different things. The law, because I happen to be an attorney, don't hold that against me. Real estate and environmental. But I wrap all of that into sort of an entrepreneurial innovation envelope. So I'm constantly evolving my career. And even within a certain career level, I'm just looking for new opportunities. I get bored somewhat easily, right? So I'm looking for the shiny nickel. Right. Some work, some don't. So right now I happen to be very busy. So sure. I'm not sleeping a lot because I'm very motivated. I'm getting a lot done. So overall, feeling really good.
So you are an attorney?
Yes, I am.
This interview's over. No, I'm just kidding. See you next week, guys. No, I'm just kidding. Well, was that always a dream? Is that something you always want to do, or a career you fell into?
No, so I finished undergrad here in Michigan, and then I was looking at I wanted to go to grad school. You know, you sort of got to differentiate that way. Yeah. I was going to do business school, but business school back then, and even now, it's very corporate, sort of structured. So law is the kind of thing that's like, as I've learned, and I tell other people, I mentor people, it's like, it's a great degree to have for a lot of other things. You don't have to practice all the time. And that was really my route. And at one point in my career, when some of my entrepreneurial pursuits were sort of wrapping up and the economy wasn't great, I actually went into a major law firm and practiced law for 5 years, which was great. I mean, and I did not have the degree, I couldn't have done that, right? So it's what I call it a differentiator. It's an insurance policy. So I would encourage a lot of young people, if they're looking at a broad-based graduate degree that they can apply to a lot of different areas, it's a great thing to look at.
Yeah, I had a similar situation when I graduated undergrad with communications. There was a choice for me to go to the business into the workforce. And I said, no, I'm gonna go to film school. I'm gonna take the extra time, the extra academic stuff, and it was great. But my degree is in art, which has which is useful in the grand scheme of, like, you know, esotericism, you know what I mean? But not like actually. Is there a film graduate in the house with this emergency? It almost never happens. But
well, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned art, because I think business is a form of art. I sort of see a lot of parallels, and that's actually what's going on in my career as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a good way of looking at it. Now I feel validated. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, because think about it. In business, you have a vision. You know, somewhat it's out there. People don't necessarily see it up front. I mean, that's ultimately innovation. It doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to pull a team around you that understands your vision. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it does work, and it's risk. So business is risk, as I see it, as is art. You know, you're taking a step out. So I think that's a really important component. And now I'm actually combining real art with business, which has been really interesting for me.
Oh, well, tell me more about that. How do they work together? Strange bedfellows, or they're a natural fit?
So about 8 years ago, I met a group in Detroit, two gentlemen, actually, we were just profiled in the New York Times, that had put together an entity called Dreamtroit. So they came from the artist community in Detroit, literally from the photography and visual arts and other forms of arts, and definitely in the techno music space. And they had identified this building. The family had a building. It was an old automotive factory. And in Detroit, there were a lot of those because we're the automotive capital. So these are buildings that were built in the 1910, 1920s and were in extended ruin. So they were virtually on the verge of being destroyed. And several are coming back, but there was this one in Detroit called Dreamtroit. And so we had two artists who knew nothing about real estate, and I was referred into them. And basically, I helped them take this auto factory and create an artist colony out of it.
Oh, wow.
We have 80, I was just down this morning, we have 80 plus spaces where artists live and work, and they basically can now stay in the community at heavily subsidized rates, and it's spurred a lot of economic development. So I was involved on the business side, you know, in terms of bringing in the money, identifying money sources, dealing with the city and so forth, but it actually was directly connected to supporting this artist enclave, if you will, in Detroit.
Yeah. Well, I've never been to Detroit. That's going to change next year. I'm a baseball guy, so I want to go to all 30 major league ballparks.
Oh, really?
America. Yeah. Okay. Let's go Mets, baby.
Yeah.
So when I have a guest from the Detroit area on the show, I ask them kind of a semi-open-ended question because as someone who's never been, is Detroit back? In your opinion?
Okay, I get that question a lot, and it's a very controversial question because the answer is it never left. So I work with a lot of people that have been in the city that never left. I happen to practice law as well in the social justice space. So I work in the city with affordable housing. So these are people. So the city went from about a little over 2 million to right now a little over 700,000, about 650,000. The people who remained have persevered. And they get insulted when you say, is Detroit coming back and revitalized? Because for them, yeah, there's been some major challenges. And now we're getting the reinvestment that we require, that we deserve, because a lot of the injustice in terms of how it got to where it is today, in terms of predatory lending and all that. So that aside, I would say that there's significant growth. Now, the growth started downtown about 10 years ago. And that's where I spent a lot of my career in the last 10 years. But now it's deeper into the neighborhoods, like this artist colony I'm telling you about.
Yeah.
It's definitely on the outskirts of the downtown area. So it's now spreading way beyond the core downtown area. So Detroit is really, really happening right now.
No, I understand the sentiment. I live in Los Angeles, and a lot of times that is used on TV for people for the good and the bad, depending on which networks you tune into. And we're talking about this as we started the show. You know, the housing situation in Los Angeles isn't great, but I do think it mimics and parallels other cities. So walk me through this. I feel like there is two things happening at once. We're in a perpetual housing crisis, but yet the luxury properties have no vacancy or have no occupancy.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happened over the last really 3 or 4 years, from COVID forward. So in this relatively short period, we have seen housing inflation well exceed income inflation, right? So you've got this massive gap on affordability. That's basically what's happened, right? So housing has gone up in some areas, 20, 30+%, and wages, 2, 3, 4% a year. So where we're at right now is, can we bend the housing price curve down? Unlikely. Construction costs are not going to collapse. And can we significantly accelerate the income curve? Probably not. I mean, there's traditional wage growth. So the question is, how do you solve this problem? So can you solve it on the supply side? Yes, that's a big part of it. So in the affordable housing area where I'm focusing, a lot of government money, state money, federal money is focused on affordable. Now, quick aside, since the election, there's a lot of people who are concerned about what's going to happen for federal housing policy. So that's a whole other issue. But even last week, before that happened, one of the issues, the problems we have in the United States is, based on my research, the average house in the United States in terms of square footage is almost double Western Europe. So we have this addiction to massive square footage, right? So the quickest way to solve the affordable housing problem is build smaller. So I'm involved with the development in Detroit using something called a community land trust. And this is where the community owns the property. This goes back to the civil rights movement, and then it leases it over time. So it maintains affordability at certain, subsidized income levels. But what we're focused on is we're building smaller homes. So instead of 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom homes, we're building 1,200 square foot. And they're perfectly adequate. They're comfortable. They're in safe neighborhoods, but we can build 5 1,200 footers versus 3 1,600 footers. So it's some of the, but everybody, the American dream is, this certain size home and all that. So there's part of this retrenching of what people, you don't always get what you want, you get what you need. I keep coming back to that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I'm with you. I think there's like a perception, and I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing or maybe because I'm a first generation American myself. My parents are from the West Indies. There's like an idea of the size issue of the United States. When I go to a steakhouse, I want the entire porterhouse. You know what I mean? What's a tapa? I don't have time for that. And so, and I also miss, because I'm from Brooklyn, I do miss those small neighborhoods where people were okay with living above stores, where people were okay with living not in alleyways, but with side housing. But it does feel like the dream is the house, the freestanding structure, some bit of a lawn, some good school. It seems very hard to maintain that.
Right. So there's a lot of controversy right now. New York is actually in the middle of passing this major measure where they're changing zoning. So within existing neighborhoods, you can set up accessory dwelling units, ADUs. Okay. Yeah. You can build separate housing units on the existing property. Okay. So a couple things there. Makes a lot of sense because it's not greenfield. You're using existing utility infrastructure, but big pushback from some of the people there. It's the NIMBY problem, not my backyard, traffic, noise. So you've got this constant, the entrenched residents like the status quo.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And the government is trying to change policy, which doesn't already. So it's a very difficult issue, which is, again, it's where I spend most of my time, and I like difficult things. That's why I'm doing it.
As a failed political candidate, there's nothing more discouraging than keep things the same.
What were you running for? Yeah, what were you running for?
Oh, here in Los Angeles, we have a series of neighborhood councils, which sounds very like fluffy, but they are affiliated with the city. So I would do the same ethics thing. And so my neighborhood, Palms, which is north of Culver City, that's where Sony Pictures, Jeopardy is.
Right. Okay.
I ran for the business representative because I felt, even though Palms has a lot of transient population, it's between two major freeways, the Interstate 10 and Interstate 405. A lot of the people that actually live there are young families and people who, like myself, self-employed or single people. There really wasn't a connection from the business side to the culture side. Everyone kind of left to work and came back and slept and went back out. Very, very wrong. So I ran as a business representative because I wanted to have this communication between businesses to say, hey, look, let's keep things local. And I learned something very important when I ran. People usually have one major issue, and their major issue at the time was more trash cans. And that was it. The vision of like making this inter-network, which is too much. And then was like, hey, look, man, thanks for the ideas, kid. We want more trash cans. And I came in dead last in a 3-man dash for 2 spots. And I said, you know what? Politics just ain't for me. NIMBY.
Well, see, that really strikes an interesting story in terms of what's happened in Detroit over the last 10 years. So Mayor Duggan, who came in literally 10 years ago, and it's question next week he's going to announce his 3rd term or not. So here we have a city that is 75% Black, 80+% persons of color. White mayor comes in, 10 years ago, and what he focused on, this is coming out of the bankruptcy. This is like 2013, 20, was streetlights, trash pickup, buses on the road. I mean, he literally, I was in his war room recently. I've seen the war room, and he has all these metrics on the wall. Don't tell me about cool new cultural stuff. I want to be safe in my neighborhood. I want the police to show up in 7 minutes, not 70 minutes. I mean, the city was literally broken. And that's when you talk about coming back, it's really those basic things that are now in place. So when I'm out working in the neighborhoods now, we're trying to build affordable housing. We have those basics in place, in terms of infrastructure. So that's a lot of what's happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as someone who's played many rounds of SimCity, it is the little things that improve the quality of life. Right. So talk to me about the idea of what is considered affordable. I feel like that's a decision that changes all the time. I can't afford rent. I haven't been able to afford it in 20 years. Talk to me.
Okay, so there's some technical definition, then there's some sort of philosophical one. So technically, 30% is sort of the percent of income dedicated to housing, whether it's rent or house payment. That's sort of the technical definition. If you're over that, you're exceeding affordability. Then there's extreme unaffordability. Like if you're close to 50%, then you're significantly burdened from an affordability perspective. Sure. I see different statistics. I mean, in the city of Detroit, the numbers are, 40+% of the people are affordable. And then beyond that, if you get to people, if you pull in everybody that's affordable or, significantly burdened affordable. But here's my issue with that. There's this concept of relative poverty. Everybody's poor, meaning if I'm making 50 grand a year, the guys next door is making 100. I feel poor.
Right.
If I'm making 250, the guy next door is making 500, a bunch of Teslas, I feel poor. So this is what I was getting back before is, what do you need? Where are you in the pecking order? Right. And you covet the guy with the car and this and that. I feel that too. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think that's in part very American too. Right. Yeah. So how big the house? I keep coming back to that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's like this idea that we want to be successful, but we're almost ashamed to be successful until we're super successful. I remember when COVID happened, as a small business owner, I qualified for the PPP, and it was like very small. It was like $3,000, and my EDIL was like $5,000. What? I remember my friend who had like businesses being like, yeah, we only make 2 million, man. We're a small business. Right. We only make 25 million. We're a small business. And it got it's kind of like race to the top or race to the bottom as far as like self-flagellation.
Right. But there is, but let me, I don't want to, bring too much humor to that, because at the basic substance level, in terms of affordability, like I said, people need a safe, structure, 4 walls, and a safe neighborhood. So like in Detroit right now, I'm very active, to build a simple 1,300 square foot house. We're using modular housing too, which is helping a little bit. Yeah. You're looking at, $250,000, $300,000 plus for a basic residence because of construction costs and everything else. And we're working with the city to get subsidies and all that. So just the baseline affordability And that translates to with subsidies, someone making in the $60,000, $70,000, maybe $80,000 range in Detroit, depending on geographically. So the inflation has been so high on housing. So then you go back to rental. Okay, American dream, not everybody can own, right?
Right.
People don't want to own. They got headaches. You're a homeowner. It's a headache. Depending on if you were a homeowner. So I advocate more rental. Some people start with rental, then they go to home ownership over time. So we got to mix it up, but it's a complicated problem.
Can I ask you about that? Because I'm what considered, I hate the phrase, but I'm considered a millennial. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was Gen Y, dang it. And that's what I think I am. But the very much idea, we kind of grew up, those on my age, so I'm in my late 30s. We kind of grew up in of seeing the shift between ownership and false ownership, between everything being provided as a service. So I ask you, now more than ever, with new inventory being tied to HOAs and the fees that go with that, are we really homeowners? Is that really a desire, it seems, for the future generations to become a homeowner if they have to pay things every month?
Well, basically, you're a homeowner, except you have a big partner called the bank, right? So if you're borrowing money, no, you have a home ownership, but you've got a big burden, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm seeing of the younger kids, and I read a lot about this. You're seeing a lot of high-end luxury housing, both at the first home buyer level, people late 20s looking at families who are putting off buying home. One, they can't afford it. And two, there's all this new product coming out. I'm sure you see it all over LA, just beautiful, the amenities, the rooftop and the restaurants and all that. And, maybe these rentals cost, $2,500, $3,500 in LA plus. I actually have a son in LA who's paying like $3,500 for a small unit, but there's no aggravation. There's no maintenance, no maintenance cost. I know what I'm paying. I got a covered parking. I call the landlord. I got headaches, and it's a year or two. Right. So that's becoming appealing, I think, to some people. And then at the other end of the spectrum, empty nesters, 60 plus, do they need all this aggravation? They need 4,000 square feet. No. So again, they're going into these luxury 2,500, 3,000 square feet. They travel, they have a place maybe in Florida and place in the northern area, so it's housing as a service is the way I think about it.
Yeah. And to go circle back about the artist collective in Detroit, having those of a certain background living together, is that a look into the future of making this more palpable for more people?
So a lot of what I talk about with my colleagues, Flobo, is decommoditizing housing. So when we're involved, people buy the house over the last 5 years. I read about, oh, my house doubled. You got lucky. You were in a period when it doubled. Go back 15 years and see what happened to your house. So when I work with deeply affordable folks and community land trusts and so forth, the question is, the house is a safe place to live. I'm not betting on it for massive generational wealth growth. You know what I mean? Sure. Yeah, I'll get some incremental year to year, and especially with the artist, they're doing their art in their living space. So that's why this live work artist community makes a lot of sense, because they can leverage the cost. They don't have to have an apartment, then they got to go buy rent a studio. So you get this leverage cost. Like we're renting downtown. I was just down this morning and met some of the artists. 600-700 square feet, 12-foot ceilings. $800. $1,000, $1,200, but that you're done, and you're running your business there.
Yeah, that's
it's affordable game, right? Exactly. Yeah. So that's where I see it. Where we've decommoditized housing, and it's because think about what's going on right now. It's so crazy. I mean, what we learned from COVID, the office buildings are 34-40% vacant. So did we ever really need the office buildings? I mean, it's cool to have them, but think. So there's such, and then by the way, when we needed them, the houses were empty all day long.
Right.
So if you talk about time occupancy of real estate, and you can substitute living space for office space, there's massive oversupply.
Why do you think, excuse me, why do you think that is? I felt like with the office space boom about 15, 20 years ago, everybody wanted to have a whole floor. That was what businesses were. Even before the pandemic, work from home became a thing. Now with the pandemic, a lot of things are work from home only, but there's some companies that want people to go back to an office, like a cultural thing. Like how much is it really is the space versus how much is it we're doing it because we're used to it or it's culturally preferred?
Okay, so let's just rewind pre-COVID. Yeah, things were incrementally year to year. You were getting some work from home. WeWork was coming in. It was trending. Okay. And I work with some folks in the commercial real estate, like office space, and, law firms were making smaller spaces. So COVID just like catapulted that, forward 5 years. Right. Okay. Yeah. So then what we found was, wow, now I'm at home. I have all this free time. I can run to the grocery store. I can take the kids to school. quote unquote more productive. At least I think I am more productive. Okay. I work from home a lot and I love it. Okay. But I also miss being in the office because stuff happens in the office. It doesn't happen at home. It happens instead of running into people in the hallway or running down the street downtown Detroit, having a coffee or something. You run into folks. So I think we're losing some of that. We're losing some of that serendipity in the business cultural world even. So I think now you're saying, Amazon and others, they're like pushing, we want you back in the office. It's very fluid right now. I think we're moving back a bit. We're never going to be back to 100%, I think, in terms of occupancy. So companies they're using a hoteling space where you share space with folks. So maybe we're getting, maybe we'll top out at, 70, 80%, which I think is okay. We got to find something to do with the old office buildings. Somewhere we're talking about housing. I've done some office to housing conversion. It's very complicated, but it can be done. Yeah. But also you have some more private life at home, which is cool. It's a more flexible life with your family. So I like the balance.
We're going to have 20 floors of comedy clubs coming soon. Flea markets and piano stores, is whatever it is. Yeah. So talk to me about your entrepreneurial life and mix. I know that we were talking about this before we went live, that there is a heavy research component. I guess it's a legal thing as well, working with your team, working with your clients. How do you slice out your day as far as your duties are concerned?
Right. So, that's sort of evolved in my career. Remember, so let's just go back. Law school, coming out of law school, I wasn't ready to practice law. I actually founded my first company in law school. It was an environmental database company. This is when the Superfund law was coming into play. And when I graduated law school, much to my wife's chagrin, I didn't take the offer. I had the big law firm offer, as you can imagine. So I survived that, but I built the company, which became a significant company that I ran for about 10 years with venture capitalists. And it's the largest company today that does environmental due diligence information for real estate transactions. It locates all the toxic sites and helps the real estate investors and the banks. So that was pure venture capital, like a rocket ship ride, some partners, but roller coaster. Then basically I had that stretch when the economy was slowing down where I went traditional. I was working for the big law firm, culture shock for me, but it was great because I actually practice law, so that's the discipline of practicing, dealing with clients. And then when the economy came back, this is more like 10, 12 years ago, I was like, okay, I got enough of this. You know what I mean? That's when I got back into the real estate development business, when Detroit was coming out of the bankruptcy. So things were, the ship was leaving the port now from the storm had settled. And commercial real estate is very entrepreneurial. It's a blank slate. Again, you're building your teams, you're bringing in all your partners and your money and your creatives and all that. So that went on for about 10 years, and that still goes on to some extent. But about 2 years ago, a little less than two, I was approached by a colleague from my law school called Wayne Law School, who had been in the social justice law firm for it's been around for about 5 years, and they needed someone with affordable housing development, actual development, hands-on background. So I had sort of wrapped up some of my big project, and I was looking to, I'm getting into the late third, fourth quarter of my career, right? So it's a bit of the give back, right?
Yeah.
And this was sort of a cool give back, but it was still using all my skills. So, the saying about you get into this sort of age frame, you've got the energy to sustain and the wisdom to apply it, right? So it's sort of that good confluence, right? So I joined this group and I spent, it's a great environment. We're deeply committed to the city, which is where a lot of this you're hearing my understanding what's happening on the ground. Because I didn't come from that community, right? But I know it a lot better, in terms of the real problems on the ground in the city. So today is really a combination because I have some time. I can do some other things, which is a great reason why I like this. I can do some of my side gig stuff as well, but I'm really grounded with this social justice law firm, which has been great for me.
How to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Exactly. You're totally on the ground, and just a huge learning cultural for me, in terms of the folks that I'm living with there.
We ask a lot of entrepreneurs this as far as how do you celebrate your wins? Now, whatever you consider a win is up to you, but like when you say, hey, look, that a really good day at work, how do you just say, yeah, I got that?
Actually, today was one of those days.
Let's go.
Because I'm working on a project. Yeah, I'm working on a project, and I sort of met with some people and everything. Okay, we like your project. And I don't like go out and do like a formal party or thing. It's more, to me, it's a confidence thing. I feel good. I feel that an idea I'm working up is coming together, and I've got other people around me, because the key thing as an entrepreneur is surrounding yourself with those smarter people that help you propel forward. So the extent that I can help people see my vision, whether it's working in the social justice space and understand it or working on some other project, it's very rewarding, because it can't be a solo. You can't do it on your own. So that's, to me, And you can't bask in the glory. If you sell a company, that's sort of cool, but that wears off quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sort of on to your next deal. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you.
So to me, it's just sort of, wow, people are buying into this,
Before we went live, we were talking about white papers. I thought you were doing that for fun. That's actually part of your job.
Well, I do that. So that's more on the law. So the white papers. So, to me, it's about, I like to use the word educating, but that's sounds somewhat egotistical. It's communicating, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to the extent I can, in 1,200 words, lay out my vision and people understand it. So that's what I'm doing. Like, in some of this, like LinkedIn, all this stuff, and like in the city, we put policy memos together. It's sort of boring, but people say, oh, okay, I get it. That's like the legal stuff. You got to sort of break stuff down. You maybe look to some legal precedent. But sometimes you got to slow down, not have all these cool, fun interviews. You got to, okay, buckle down. These are the real issues. So that's where I like my legal background, because, that's sort of the grounded stuff. You got to grind through the text and the language to make sure it's making sense and it's legally founded. And that's one way to talk about it. And podcasts and conferences and all that stuff is, the more of interactive. So it's a combination of media. You
don't stop, man. Are you all about naps? Like, how do you do this? Like, how do you balance?
Yeah, I mean, on Saturdays, weekends, I definitely try to slow it down. But if I'm gonna roll with something, you got to keep rolling. You know how it is, right? When you're hot and you got folks, what are you gonna stop? No, I'm taking off for a week. No.
Yeah, it's true. Last night I was dead tired, like 9:30. I was like, I'm gonna call it a day. Mental health, whatever. Took a nap. Woke up at 11:30. Like, I had a great idea.
Right. Oh, I'm like
11 to 2.
Do you get up and like start emailing yourself comp notes and stuff?
Oh yeah, you have to, because you're hunting, not actually hunting. Respect to those who did it for a living, but if you don't get the job done, you don't eat.
Right.
Exactly. Push it, so.
Right. So you got to sort of keep capturing your ideas and getting them out there. And so this weekend, believe me, I'm going to be taking some downtime. Just because it's been a very busy week. So.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Mark, you've been on the show, New Amsterdam Radio. Before we get you out of here, what part-time this is. I get to ask some of those fun questions, kind of department questions, so we get to know more about you. Are you down to play, sir? All right. Where did you vacation?
Okay, so there's a really cool place that my wife has been going, I don't know, for 20 years. So it's, there's some cool exotic places like Europe, Caribbean, we've been going, but there's this place in Southern Ontario that we go to there's like this French chateau, literally about 3 hours from here. It's called Langdon Hall. Oh, it was the summer estate of John Jacob Astor out of New York 150 years ago. It's about 200 acres. It's literally about 2.5 hours, but you feel like you're in Europe. So it's got like really high end, you have to blow your diet for the weekend. Yeah. Really sort of quiet surroundings. And you can go there for 3 days, 2 nights, getaway, and you definitely feel like you've been away. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's sort of, when I think about like regular places we've gone back to, that's definitely, and of course our kids are on the coast. So we have, we're going there regularly, LA and DC pretty much. So we have to throw that in. But if we're just going to,
we have to see our kids.
No, we love the kids. Are you kidding? They come here a lot too. But if we're just doing our routine, like a long weekend thing, Ontario is really cool.
It's interesting because of recency bias, because I'm from the East Coast. And so for my entire life, Ontario, CA was Ontario, Canada. But of course, now I live in LA. I think of the city of Ontario, CA, which is not. Why would you go there? That's awful. Like, oh yeah, right, the real one. I
had a significant business partner in Redlands, so I flew into Ontario.
Yeah,
I would do 24 hours into Ontario, back to Detroit.
Yeah, you don't stay in Ontario. I'm just kidding, y'all. Okay.
Sorry, Ontario.
Don't get me in trouble. What do you collect?
I don't know. I remember I told you I listened to 12 of your podcasts. So I've made some notes on that one. So what I collect, I actually haven't realized. I collect really cool, inspirational emails from my kids.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
I print them out, like, wow, I feel proud that my kid came up with that thought or that observation. So I have a bunch of that stuff pasted on my wall. If you saw here in my office. Yeah.
Wow. Shout out to the kids, man. Like my dad is such like a grump. You kind of feel weird doing things like that, but I'm glad they persevere. That's awesome.
Well, the quick thing on the kids. The kids are, late 20s, but during COVID, they're mid 20s. They came home for months. So I never would have met my kids at that age. They graduated college, 22. All of a sudden they pop in at 24. They're adults.
Yeah.
I was living with them, learning from them. It was really it never would have happened.
Was it a positive thing?
Oh, great bonding. And now they're colleagues. My son's in real estate. We talk about deals. My daughter, she's in politics. we talk about stuff as adults that we never would have like bonded on, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've seen it on both ends with other guests on the show. That transition period where you become an authority figure to being like high counsel can be rough for some parents and kids. But when you have a chance to do it smoothly, it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, it definitely. And again, COVID, that probably wouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, It had to be COVID, but.
It is one thing I've noticed also is as tragic the pandemic was. I mean, I lost family members as well.
Oh,
there
really?
was a lot of that's why I believe it was 100% real.
Okay.
But there has been some positive things that came out of it. So I understand it's kind of like that's the virus remorse, but kind of like it was a good that came out of it.
Right.
What is an app that you cannot live without?
Oh, it's probably my Pandora. I mean, I have my I gotta say my Tracy Chapman channel. Oh my God.
Oh wow.
I just love and I've been introduced to some artists, I never would have fit. It was like the Cars, one of her songs. I went there.
Yeah.
But it's like my go-to, and it sort of calms me down. And I learn about, I'm sure, are you a Tracy Chapman fan? Who isn't, right?
I mean, yeah.
Of course, right.
I'm a wedding DJ. I've played most of her hits, yeah.
Right. When I saw her on, was it the Grammys recently? Wherever, when she was on stage with the country singer star.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. So that's pretty much my go. And I have my basic email and all that, but in terms of out of the basic, Microsoft Works and all that stuff, definitely my Pandora.
What is a piece of business advice you wish you had earlier?
So probably measure twice, cut once. Sorry about the metaphors. I know we said no metaphors, right?
I mean, yeah, you don't want to cut twice and measure once.
Right. So I've had, when you're an entrepreneur, you're not batting 1,000 all the time, right? So I've had a couple, but now when I'm looking at stuff, I take a step back. I wait a day. I don't send that email immediately. I sleep on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you'll process in background overnight. Oh, wow. Right. I'm going to add this to the email. Thank God I didn't send that email. You know what I mean? Or didn't, make the introduction or didn't make that investment, So I think that comes over time, but that's how I've evolved a bit.
I'm the firm believer in that scheduled send. Like I'll
right. I do that. I do that. But by the way, measure twice cut. But when I cut big time. All in. Right.
Yeah, as per my last email.
Dude, I was up this morning. I didn't schedule. Sometimes I schedule. Oh, if they get an email at 2 a.m., I just send the damn 2 a.m. email. I don't care. Let them know I'm kicking butt, right?
Right. Yeah. Why not?
They got to stay up with me. You know what I mean? So it depends on who I'm sending. But generally, I'm like, let's go. Because they'll move at my pace.
That is very much Batman energy. It's 3 a.m. Gotham. Too bad. Send.
Right.
And of course, the last question is the one you've heard plenty of times because this is the most fun one, in my opinion. What is your favorite junk food, sir?
Oh, my God.
You took notes, you said.
I know I did, but I've got so many that I can't eat. But I would say lately, it's probably chocolate salt caramel corn. So in Detroit, there's this Detroit caramel corn place. I was at an event recently. Yeah. I was just tasting. I didn't eat the whole bag, of course. But I'm trying to go gluten-free now. My wife's vegan-free, gluten-free. So I'm like, I've got to be really careful. So when I get out, if I get a little snack, that's probably recently, if that's coming to mind. Yeah, it's that chocolate salt combo,
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, right.
I'm just glad it's a real one. Sometimes people say I love salad, and you're like, man.
Oh no, what is salad? No.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Sometimes I'll have like plain popcorn. It's like that's kind of a junk food, but that is a junk food.
Salad is punishment in my book. I mean, I have it a lot. It's healthy, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's limited.
Because I did the whole corporate life thing too, and I've been self-employed for 7 years, and there's a lot of things about living in an office culture that people can't stand, like the long meetings or the Happy Tuesday. But for me, the point where I snapped is that 12:30 salad shake. The dressing, and I couldn't. One day I had to snap, like I'm leaving, and that was it.
One traditional office anecdote, if I could. Okay. When I was working in the law business, there was the traditional law firm, a bunch of offices. And, I would leave, whatever. Everybody sort of left when the boss left and all that crap. So one day, there was a guy next to me and I would leave and his light was always on, and I was like, okay, where's this guy? I finally said, why are you leaving your light on every day? The bottom line is he wanted the boss to think he was still there, right? This is the stupid things people did in offices.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just how ridiculous is that?
Now you have timestamps. You can't.
You're fobbing in and out. Right. Exactly. Unless you give your buddy the fob or something, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No more salads, y'all. Well, no, Mark, this has been a lot of fun. Just hanging with you and getting more about your background. But here's the fun part. If someone wants to learn more about you and your businesses, how to go about doing that?
Best stop would be my LinkedIn. It's Mark, MarkJay Bennett, Bennett, because you can get right to my website. But you can also see I'm posting a couple times a week. So you can see the stuff I'm reading, the events I'm going to. Of course, I'm following Flobo now, but I'm planning to be out. I'm planning to be out in LA before my son leaves, so maybe we can grab a drink or something if you're up to it.
I'm on the west side. Say hello.
Okay, no, I'd love to. Oh, that sounds great. So.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I've learned so much. And yes, when I make it out to Detroit, I think it's going to be the first week of April. I'll definitely hit you up to see the Tigers play in the cold.
You're going to give me a day. I'm going to give you the mega tour. I'm going to show you all the sites. We're going to have some nice meals. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I gotta. We'll talk about this after the show. Yeah. It's going to be a good thing because I got to get all 30 in there this year. That's the goal.
Oh, for the game. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is Do Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creatives. Thanks so much for being on the show. We're going to have you on in a future episode to see how things are evolving.
Absolutely. Sure. Love to. Thanks. Really enjoyed it, Flobo.